good at telling the history, isn't he? I really don't have to say much. He said it all. And I love Ben, and I have to say we have, among those in leadership positions in the office, we have a lot of fun together. We like working together. We like making decisions together, even though it might get a little hot sometimes in discussion. But we have a great time. And I'm just really thrilled to be down here with all of you. It's so interesting. I can remember when in the early days, Silver Retreat, Silver Club as we called it then, was in St. Mary's. But you kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it was, there's no room for the buses. There's no way for everyone to get here. There's no way to do the catering up here. It was just so voluminous, so we decided to switch and bring the silvers here, and then the golds go to St. Mary's, and it's worked out extremely well. Well, if you look at your numbers, you need a big place like this farm to go and spread your wings and run around and run through the fields and look at the old equipment and just stand in awe. I'm in awe every time I come down. And as Ben said, we just finished our fall festival last week. There were so many people here who don't know about Young Living. And so we have an opportunity to introduce ourselves to horse people who come for the draft horse show and the rodeo, and they get all excited about what we're doing. They don't even hardly know we exist. Well, if they don't know that, you must not be talking enough, so we need you to be out there talking more, right? Isn't that how we spread the word? But I look at everyone, I look at all of you, I look at the buildings, and with this gorgeous weather, I just stand in awe of what we have together. I doubt Ben's probably the only one who has been with us practically from the beginning. And he'll remember the early days of this farm. But when Gary decided that he wanted this farm, we leased it in the beginning from 4 brothers who were all retired, and they sold beef. It was an old Angus cattle ranch. And the beef were kept in a pen up there in the front by the main road, and nothing else on the farm was used. It was just weeds, sagebrush, nothing was here except for an old farmhouse. And when Gary decided he was going to remodel the old farmhouse and make a visitor center out of it, he went over and he talked to all the animals, the rats, the mice, the rabbits, the dogs, the cats, and told them they all had to go and find a new home, that he was taking over the building, and they left. It was really odd. He had the most remarkable way of talking to animals. But we got it remodeled enough that we could sleep in a bedroom upstairs, because Gary liked to get up at 4 in the morning and start working. I don't know anybody who worked as hard as he did, and he could almost work the clock around. But we would stay down here, and it was so absolutely quiet. There was no sound. And if you go up to the visitor center, that area out in front that is all closed in was an open patio. And it was kind of dilapidated. But we would sit out there in the evening and watch the sun go down. And one evening we were out there, and Gary stood up and he walked over to the railing, and he's just staring out into space. So I got up and I walked over there and stood next to him, and I looked up at him, and he said, "Mary, can't you see all the people coming here?" And I looked at him and I said, "No, I can't. Why would anybody come down here? We are so far away." And he said, "You watch. They will come. We will build it, and they will be here." And I just thought, Gary. But you are the ones fulfilling that vision. All of you who come, anyone who comes to the farm fulfills that vision that Gary had. And he believed so strongly in the connection to Mother Earth. He felt like the human soul was not whole, was not complete, if it didn't connect with the earth and it didn't connect with animals. And that's why we have the horses. He wanted people to connect with these big animals. And he was a horse person. He loved horses. He grew up riding horses, and he would come down and talk to them. And he just had a fabulous time with his animals, fabulous time with the workers out in the fields. I remember when we started in Ecuador, we have a little house. I call it my crack house. And it's my crack house because it has cracks everywhere. Because the ground is unstable and it moves a lot. So you get cracks in the floor, and cracks in the ceiling, and cracks in the walls. And they're constantly repairing the cracks. But in the house, we could hear everyone laughing out in the field. Because wherever Gary went, he had everybody laughing. He just made it fun. He made it fun for the workers. And when we had the funeral for Gary here at this farm, they live streamed it down in everywhere. But in Ecuador, all of the workers were sitting out on the cement in front of the cookers, watching and being a part of that. And I felt so badly because the last time I had been down there, I promised them that I would bring Gary back with me. But it didn't work out that way. So when I went back, I took 2 of Gary's favorite oil blends, and I let them pick and take what they wanted, and they cried. They cried because of what he gave them, because of the opportunity. It's the same thing here. He would go out in the fields. He loved being with the plants. He loved organizing everything we had here. And if you go into the distillery and you look at the first cooker, just imagine no roof, no other cookers, and that cooker hanging with chains from the front end loader. And Gary, I remember we were at home getting ready to come down, and he was so distraught because he said, "Mary, I don't have anything to show them. I don't have it in the ground. I can't demonstrate the distilling." And I said, "Gary, they're going to see what you're doing. They're going to see the future that you're creating. They're going to be so excited." And he, of course, was on the front end loader, and I think there's a picture of it in my book, in the Seed to Seal book. And here's this cooker hanging with a chain from the bucket of the front end loader. That's all he had to show everyone, and he was really disappointed with that. So when you think of those early beginnings, when I think of that and I see his face and I hear his words, and I think how stressed he was that he didn't have something special to show to you who were coming to be a part of this farm event. And now you look and you see what we have. It is so glorious, the vision that he had for everyone who would come here. And we all, and I'm one of you, I enjoy it like you enjoy it. My boys enjoy it like you enjoy it. Sure, they grew up with their father, and Jacob loves the jousting, and he has chosen to follow his father's footsteps. I said to him I don't know, last week I said, "Do you really like doing this?" And he said, "Mom, I really like this. I really like it." And you can see he was having a lot of fun out there. But it was all for your enjoyment. Everything that Gary did was for all of us, for all of you. Gary was a kind of an individual who I don't know how to explain it. It's like he could turn everything into gold. He had magical hands. No matter what he did, he could make it work. He could make it profitable. He could make it better than what it was. But his whole goal was to help other people in need. When he discovered the essential oils, in France, and he brought them home to his clinic in Mexico. And he didn't know much. There were no books. There were no people to call. There were no oils in the health food stores except for perfume oils, which didn't work for him naturally. And he just started experimenting. And he saw fabulous things happen. And he said to himself, what I have discovered down here belongs to the world. I have to take this to the world. There are so many people in need, and we have to give them that which comes from God, from God's plants, from his plants, his trees. And that's what I'm going to do. So he chose to sell everything he had, chose to sell his clinic, moved first to Nevada, to Sparks, Nevada, and then to Reno, and then to Spokane. And it was in Spokane where he planted the first lavender seeds in the back of the old building. And the lavender did so well, he harvested it after 2 years. Normally it takes 3, but he couldn't wait another year to see what he had. He was so anxious. And he only got a few drops. You've seen the pictures in the book. He welded 2 pressure cookers together and he cooked them on the stove in the basement. And he had a few members who came and helped him. I mean, there are people who still remember. But I don't have to make this up. It's all real what he did. There's no baloney. There's no coloring. There's no exaggeration. It's all for real. And when he got those few drops, he sent it to Dr. Kurt Schnabelt, who was a PhD chemist and well-known in Germany, well-known throughout the world. And Gary became friends with Kurt. And Kurt called him on the phone and said, where did you get this? He said, well, I distilled it from the plants in my backyard. And he said, no, that's not possible. He said, Kurt, come and see what I did. And he said, well, this is the finest lavender I have ever seen. And with that, the farm life for Young Living began. And Gary grew up on a farm. He was a farmer, he was a rancher. He knew about equipment, he knew about planting, he knew about all those things. He just didn't know about aromatic plants. Didn't know how to grow them, how to harvest them, how to distill them. So he went to France. And he would stay in this distillery and sleep on the floor and feed the old firebox with tires and all those horrible things that they used to burn to keep the boiler going. And he drew designs, he copied things. And Marcel Espiau, who was the president of the Lavender Association in Provence for over 20 years, laughed and said, oh, you Americans, you just think you can do it better than everybody else. And he laughed. He thought Gary was so funny that Gary was going to build a distillery in Utah and grow lavender plants. Oh, that just wasn't possible. Well, if you knew Gary, no matter what you said, he would have a smile on his face. And if you told him he couldn't do it, the smile got even bigger. Because he would show you can't did not exist in his vocabulary, and we weren't allowed to use the word can't in our home. So he started, and when we moved down here to Spokane, the first thing he said is, I've got to buy land, I've got to build a distillery down here. So he started looking, and we found a small piece of property up further north, further south into Mona. But that was only 120 acres, and it wasn't enough. That's where we built the first greenhouses. But then we met the Andrews brothers, who were the ones who owned this property and who had the beef farm. And so we leased that from them for about 3 years, and then we bought it outright. And we sold the other little farm up there. And Gary became such an expert in the understanding of the plants and the right time to harvest, the right time to distill. And he wanted it perfect. Why? Because he knew how important it was to all of you. He knew the power of the essential oils. He knew how they could affect people's lives. He knew the need that was out there in the world. And he wanted to meet that need. Little old Gary Young from Chalice, Idaho, who grew up in the mountains, who wasn't spoiled by the politics and the laws and the rules, the regulations of city life. He just did what had to be done. He never saw it as not a possibility. Many of you, how many of you been up to Tabiona? A few of you. How many are going after Silver Club? A few of you. Well, when Gary bought that ranch, it was very dilapidated. And that was one of the reasons why it didn't sell, because it was in such bad condition. But Gary always looked at everything as to how he was going to make it better. When he bought this farm, and he made that statement to me out on the porch, he could see what he was going to do, because he knew you were going to come, and he wanted it to be good for you. He wanted you to have a wonderful experience here. He wanted you to be close to nature. He wanted you to see his horses and be close to his big horses and go for a ride in the wagons. He wanted all of this for you, not for himself. He never once ever thought of what he needed, because he was perfectly happy in the mountains. And when we would go to Warm Springs, which is where he grew up, in the wilderness area of Chalice, Idaho, he never wanted to come out of the mountains. Oh, it was a struggle. And he would put it off one more day, 2 more days. Oh, let's just stay one more. Oh, can't we just stay a couple more days? And he would go fishing, and he would go up to the medicine wheel, and he would just immerse himself in what nature had to offer. So he didn't have any reason to come and do this. He was driven because of what he discovered, knowing how much it was going to be of value to you in your lives, which is why he built what he built and why we have what we have here today. He built it for us, for you. And I think of Ecuador and the Finca Ranch, the Finca Farm. It's so beautiful down there. You can't even imagine anything like that being built in the middle of the jungle. So that's got to be one of your goals. You want to go to St. Mary's. That's the home. That's the first farm. That's where Gary discovered so much about distilling, and it has a beautiful spirit up there. It's tiny. It's only 200 acres. We're almost 1,700 acres here. But when you go, you can feel that presence. You can feel that love and caring that comes from those who work at that farm. You feel it here from those who work at this farm, for those who work at Finca, for those who work at Northern Lights. I would make it your goal to go and visit all of the farms, because every single farm is different. No two are alike. They're not even similar, except that they grow plants and they distill and they produce oils. But it's all so very different. It's exciting to be a part of Young Living, of what we have now, because we're growing. People are in need of what we have. You are the messengers. You are so important. You are more important than what we do here at the farm. Because if we didn't have you out there taking the message to the world, there would be no need for the farm. There would be no need for all of us who work together trying to make decisions that are going to benefit all of you. It's because of the power of what we have, and those of you who have experienced know what I'm talking about. And those of you who are growing and learning, it certainly will come, and that day you will recognize the joy of what we have when someone calls you on the phone and says, I just had the best night's sleep I've had in many years. That was one of the first things that was said to me when I introduced the oils to someone. And that was so amazing, and you think, well, that's no big deal. It's a big deal if you can't sleep at night. Do you see what I mean? Do you hear what I'm saying? I can't do what you can do. I'm only one person. One, and so on. But when we join together, we become a very powerful force for good in the world. And we need to link together and acknowledge that power that we have. I don't feel any difference in the spirit that you bring from country to country, to culture, to language, It doesn't matter where you come from. Because when we come together, we come for the same reason. We come to celebrate for the same reason. And we go out in the world and we build our business for the same reason. To bring what we have, what we've experienced to someone else out there in the world. There are millions of people who are waiting for our message. They're waiting for you. And if you don't speak, they're going to miss out. I've heard so many amazing stories. They never stop. And that's why we do what we do. One time, Gary and I were walking through the Salt Palace at convention, and this really nice member came up to me and she said, "Oh, Mary, I wish I could tell you my story." And I looked at her and I said, "Well, why can't you?" And she said, "Well, can I?" And I said, "Well, I'm standing right here." So she told me her story. She said she'd probably hear things like that all the time. It's probably no big deal. And I said, every single person is unique to their experience and to the story that they have. And the reward is the story. The reward is what happens to you when you experience what we have. So just remember that when you're out there talking. There are so many different things going on in the world. There are so many different ways to make money, and people really chase the dollar. And chasing the dollar can't be sustained. Eventually, it just fizzles out. And it's usually those in the beginning who chase the dollar who make all the money, and the people who run after them are the ones who lose out. You can't look at chasing the dollar. The dollar's the byproduct of the joy that you have in not only using the products for yourself and your family, but for what you bring to someone else. That's your reward. And the money is a byproduct of that reward. Everyone needs money. Everyone has to make money. Everyone has to pay their bills. But why not make it doing something that you love, something that helps people, and something that's fun, and something that brings us together like this, where we just had a grand and glorious time being together. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yes. Thank you so much for all that you do. Thank you for being here, because you being here tells me that you've been busy. You've been talking to people. You've been doing what you need to do. And that's important to all of us. So get together, talk with each other, share your stories. Sit around the kitchen table, any table you can find, and tell your story. They can't stop you from telling telling others what's in your heart. And we need to hear that. I want to hear your story. I want to be part of your excitement. I want to feel that love that you have for what you discovered, for what you feel for one another. So let's spend the rest of the day here in this glorious weather, because I don't know for how much longer we're going to have it. This is highly unusual. This is October, and normally it's cold. So we are blessed with this gorgeous, gorgeous weather. So go out and enjoy every minute that you have here, and we'll see you tomorrow at the Salt Palace.